Thank you for staying with us here on ANN7 Prime. If you have just joined us, my name is Audrey Chimwanda. In our top story of this half hour, the ANC National Working Committee's meeting is underway at Luthuli House to discuss President Jacob Zuma's future in the office. The NWC is meeting after another top brass huddle at Zuma's residence in Pretoria last night. The meeting comes amid rising calls for Zuma to resign from his position as President of South Africa before SONA this Thursday. Frantic engagements are currently on over the leadership transition within the ANC. Significantly, the decision to remove Zuma can only be taken by the National Executive Committee of the ANC and not the NWC.
We would not know when exactly that National Working Committee meeting would end, except to confirm that it is indeed taking place. This meeting has been called today for the national officials to give a report back to the mandating structure, which was the National Working Committee, on their meeting with Comrade President Jacob Zuma held yesterday. So as soon as those discussions are wrapped up, I'm sure we will expect a report on its outcomes if necessary.
So here's what ANN7 has learned from the sources within the ANC. President Zuma has refused to resign despite some in the top six telling him to do so. Sources say Zuma wants to speak to the National Working Committee and ask why he must be forced out. President Zuma is said to strongly believe that he will not be forced into leaving the president's post. Sources suggest that Zuma wants to choose the timing of his exit. Well, let's talk about it. Here at home, also welcome to join in the conversation on a Twitter handle at ANN7TV. Kim Heller, political analyst, is live in studio. Butsang Moela, political analyst, is also in studio. Mosiri Tseane, South African Liberty Foundation chairperson, also joins us on the phone line. Professor Berry Hanyane, we see you, political analyst, will be joining in the conversation as well. Welcome to ANN7 Prime once again. I suppose the question going forward for some would be, will President Jacob Zuma be delivering the State of the Nation address? I mean, is there a question to that at all? What's that?
Well, good evening, Audrey and fellow panelists and ANN7 viewers. Look, I'm convinced where I'm sitting that the head of state, President Jacob Zuma, will deliver the State of the Nation address. There is nothing, Audrey, absolutely nothing on earth that will save the face of South Africa and South Africans when we have less than 48 hours for the head of state to deliver a State of the Nation address. I mean, it will be very upset for me to sit down here and think where I'm sitting that a head of state who has the responsibility to lead the country will just out of peer pressure and pressure from mainly opposition parties and a call from opposition parties decides to abandon the ship that is supposed to captain towards a State of the Nation address. But I don't know also why is the nation so much focused and worried about the State of the Nation address as if it is the alpha and the omega of the South African politics, as if the State of the Nation address determines the flow of the economy in the country and how politics are run. That is just one of the elements of governing in the country for the head of state to deliver that important, speech or statement at the beginning of a calendar year. But we cannot sit here and ignore the crisis that the country is being faced with. Like, look at the water shortages in Cape Town. It's much more important to me than the State of the Nation address. You look at the situation with students being able to register after the head of state has pronounced on free higher education. And people are focusing on what I will call Mickey Mouse games while they were supposed to be focusing on governance and where the country is heading to. So I don't think the president will resign between today and the next 48 hours, which will be leading to the State of the Nation address. But I also don't think it will be wise for the captain of the ship or the head of state to do such. No matter the pressure, that we may be faced with or he may be faced with as the head of state, you do not abandon the ship during the crisis moment. That's when you hold on to the ship and steer it to safe waters, so that when you decide to abandon it or to leave this ship, with its sailings, it must be in safe place and in safe waters. And we are not at that state at the moment. And
I suppose the reason why some would be focusing on the SONA is apparently it is one of the bargaining chips in the negotiations, very delicate as they are, that have been going on with the top six, with President Zuma making it very clear that he doesn't see any reason why he should step down. Going forward, obviously the opposition parties are clinging on to this. It seems to be something that they're holding on to as leverage, Masire.
Well, one can assume that. I mean, where have the opposition party been all throughout? They've been trying many attempts and they have failed to pass motion of no confidence against the president. They were hoping that the NDZ as a CR17 result will indicate how the ship or what should happen in the ANC. But listen, from day one, the ANC that emerged there with its new leadership have been preaching unity. I mean, how do you continue to preach unity within the African National Congress, preach unity, and suddenly there are issues that you have with the sitting head of state, which you didn't have prior for him being, for these results coming thereafter. That's, you know, so you would wonder that what crisis can the ANC have? What crisis could this country be having now that it requires that the president should move? What are they? What's so burning in South Africa that requires us to move the president now? I don't think there is anyone who says there is a crisis at that level that requires that there should be a removal of the president. Has he done anything anti the ANC or anti the current leadership? Has he in any way undermined it, disrespected it, or utter any other words that would require them to say, no, this man really needs to move. He's not going into the direction that requires the ANC to be pushing towards. There's absolutely nothing at this stage. One can look at it and say, hey, the rand is doing well. Well, president is still there. We soon will be notified that there is fuel, price is going down. Well, he's still the president.
But I suppose that is the burning question, you know, that needs to be answered. You know, what needs to happen going forward? Kim, is this essentially an ANC family issue that needs to be sorted out within the ANC? And if indeed President Jacob Zuma does decide to step down, will it hurt or unite the ANC going forward?
I think that's a very good question, and perhaps if the ANC is operating as a family now, it's behaving as a very dysfunctional family. And I'm confident that on Thursday we will see President Jacob Zuma, our president, speak and deliver a very confident address. And I'm hoping it will address key socioeconomic policies and give us a sense of the critical RET mandates issues that were mandated by the people of the ANC. And I think perhaps as a South African public, we need to start asking some hard questions and thinking a little bit more. And the question we need to ask is, who's calling for this? And who's this going to benefit? And certainly, it's not going to benefit the ANC, as to your question. It's not going to benefit the people of South Africa. I've said many times before, and I'll say it again, if recalling President Zuma would end poverty, landlessness, and structural inequality in this country, it would serve the people of this country, but it won't. It will not serve the ANC because I think, as Professor Siepe has pointed out many times, Ramaphosa's victory was on a razor-thin margin, and the ANC is not unified. So this is going to jeopardize the ANC in 2019, and it's going to jeopardize unity. And I cannot believe that the ANC is being so foolish to walk in tune to an agenda being set by the opposition. And we need to ask, who's protesting against President Zuma? It is these lily-white, well, almost lily-white protests on the streets of Cape Town, the paved streets of Cape Town. This is not the tune or the signature tune of protests around the country, which are happening almost daily. There is no call for President Zuma to go. And let us just go back to a simple thing. What was the mandate at December, and why is that not being articulated? So I think shame on the ANC's leadership that we are approaching a SONA, which I believe is a very premier opportunity to speak to the people of this country and the ANC comrades. And yet we are focusing on recall, not on the mandate.
Let's get more voices in. We have Professor Beri Hanyane, political analyst, on the phone line. Welcome, Professor. What is your take to this? What does this spell? I mean, it appears President Jacob Zuma, growing calls, we cannot ignore them. They have been coming wherever they're coming from. But is he avoiding the inevitable going forward?
Audrey, good evening, and good evening to your viewers at home. I think we cannot deny the fact that the call for the president to step down does indeed come within the ranks of the ANC. Let's go back to 2016, the local government elections, when the so-called middle-class ANC voters chose not to vote but vote with their feet. That, for me, is a sign that things are not well in the ANC. And if something is not done quickly, amongst others, asking kindly the president to step down so that a new program is put forth, which then seeks to advance unity within the party itself and perhaps cast a new path for the governing party, things will go sour for the next coming days, if not years to come. The rhetoric of unity will become the real characteristic of a party that for years wanted to see itself as the champion of the liberation of people in South Africa and perhaps a beacon of hope for the continent. I see this going away if, of course, the unity within the party is not achieved as soon as possible, and, of course, putting forth some consensus from a policy perspective that certain things must be done from a united single position. I must share this with you, that today alone, I had an interaction with no less than 4 students who do not know where the next meal will come from, who do not know whether they will sleep safely and comfortably tonight, because there was a promise of free education. And this issue is not being addressed properly, but instead we use political podiums to basically popularize the plight of students at the expense of advancing political interests and gains.
I suppose that's precisely the question to say, coming out of the elective conference, the issue of unity was preached. There was the issue of radical economic transformation. So I'm saying that President Zuma has unfinished business. He has to see this through. Why so much drama happening, for lack of a better word, between the elective conference of the ANC and the general elections of the President of South Africa?
Audrey, that's exactly what I wanted to respond to Professor Hanyan. He is mentioning very crucial things, the policy decisions that the ANC took in December conference. And the ANC itself, and Kim is very, vocal to say it's a foolish position that they've adopted. The whole 40-member National Working Committee is sitting there wasting time as if Jacob Zuma is an obstacle to the ANC implementing its policy resolutions. He is not. If the ANC can stand up in front of me and say, Jacob Zuma has disrespected the leadership of the movement, Jacob Zuma is an obstacle to unity in the ANC, Jacob Zuma is an obstacle to the ANC implementing the policies that the ANC has adopted, then I will say to the ANC leadership, then anybody who becomes an obstacle on your party policy position, remove that person from that post, because then he will derail what the ANC is supposed to implement in government. But that is not the issue. There is a call, and South Africans must know this. The very first people to call for Jacob Zuma to be recalled 2 years back already, it was the Democratic Alliance. The EFF and other opposition parties, they bought into that to recall Zuma. Now, the ANC is not proactive, it's reactive. They are reacting to what the opposition wants. They are sitting, spending money, time, resources, instead of forwarding their opposition, actually dancing to the tune and the music of the opposition. That's not what the leading political party is supposed to be doing. The ANC is supposed to be sitting for the last 2 days to focus on the SONA statement and give Jacob Zuma, who is their deployee, an instruction to say the SONA statement must read A, B, C, D, and E. No. Instead, they are sitting and focusing on asking Jacob Zuma to say, but it looks like the people don't want you outside and it's time for you to step down. He is within his constitutional right as the head of state, not a deployee of the ANC, because he's no longer the president of the ANC.
Right.
As the head of state, he's in his constitutional right to can say, but I am not resigning. I'm not in a position to resign. I don't want to resign. If you want to go and run with a motion of no confidence in the National Assembly, then you can go and do that. If he is defeated, he will be recalled by the government, by the country, by the National Assembly, not by the political party. And I think the ANC has matured. It has grown enough to can know that the mistake they made in 2008 with the previous president, Thabo Mbeki, it should not be repeated, because they suffered losses by recalling President Thabo Mbeki. The ANC suffered by doing that. Are they prepared to can suffer more losses at this moment? If I was sitting in the ANC leadership, I will weigh the so-called black middle class within the ANC and the white laments to say recall Zuma vis-a-vis what they will lose if Jacob Zuma gets recalled. The grassroots support, and will they be able to implement policies? The ANC has less than 17 months to prepare itself for national elections where Jacob Zuma will not be there.
Right, let's move forward. Let's talk about the motion of no confidence, 22nd of February. Do you think the ANC still has control of its members of parliament? I mean, to get the magic number 201, is it Mosera that is required? Or do some members of parliament will feel loyal to, to the new leadership of the ANC that's in place now?
Was there more to lose than to gain in this instance? That's what you need to I think I'll reiterate what my colleague has just said. If you go around as ANC to recall, what are you saying to also your municipalities, to your provincial government, that anywhere you can go, what you're doing is you're segmenting or making seeds of chaos in those municipalities. They can call any mayor they would like because they feel that they can do it in that fashion. ANC-led institution can fall into chaos. Thus, it was important for them at that instance, when there was a motion of no confidence passed against the president, that they stood firm, because they know that it is not only about Jacob Zuma, it's about the ANC in itself. There's so much to lose there than to gain, because after all, you'll be working in the gain of who? Of the opposition party. So ANC is not going to win in that instance by recalling Jacob Zuma. They think he's a problem, but he's not the problem. The problem, after all, is implementation of radical economic transformation. That's what South Africans need. They want to participate in the economy of the country of their birth. Where are they? They want to change the circumstances that we all find ourselves in. So that's the task that has been given to the ANC in this lifetime of Jacob Zuma, in the next lifetime of Cyril Ramaphosa. That needs to happen. So by just pushing holes into yourself will never get you anywhere. And I think ANC is intelligent enough now to know that they can't make that mistake when there is a lot that is at stake.
So either way, the ANC, will be in trouble going forward. But we can't ignore the fact that the motion of no confidence is going to happen. We saw what happened the last time with quite a number of ANC members of parliament that voted against President Jacob Zuma. Now with the perception that Zuma seems to be losing power, can they really confidently go forward knowing that, the ANC will win this?
But the question is the president losing support? And I'm not sure that is the case. We've created, not the station, thankfully, but in the general mainstream media, we've created this narrative that no one is supporting the president, but that is not true. And if we go back to the December conference, there was no entertainment of this recall. Even in the NEC meeting, we say the NEC's recall is going to recall Jacob Zuma. In fact, some members of the media even said Jacob Zuma has been recalled, and that was nonsense. The truth is that there was a handful of people calling for his for him to step down. And actually, we need to ask difficult questions at the moment. Who are these? Who is the ANC leadership speaking on behalf of? Are they speaking on behalf of the opposition party? Because they're certainly not speaking on behalf of ANC branches. They're not even speaking on behalf of leadership, and that is very worrying. I mean, actually, I think the ANC is literally losing the plot, and perhaps they've been completely captured now. And by white monopoly capital, because they seem to be doing the work of the opposition rather than themselves. So if the motion of no confidence, if they go and support the opposition, well, I'm sure as we're speaking now, the opposition is cheering the great work the ANC is doing to split and destroy itself. I mean, they're sitting back, probably sipping cappuccinos and enjoying the spectacle that the ANC is creating. But I stand by what I say. The support for the president is solid, and any attempt to oust him, I think we're going to see very strong reaction. Let us not forget that Ramaphosa's win is razor thin.
Right. Let's get Professor Berrianyana. I hope you're still with us. The power ratio with Ramaphosa and Zuma, the issue of the two centers of power and how the ANC needs to navigate through that going forward. Do you think this really is an issue that we can see happening again, in the next elective conference that we see, or was this a unique situation just with President Jacob Zuma? Of course, before that, we saw what happened with Mbeki.
Audrey, look, let me differ with some of the sentiments there in your studio. I think the power base of the President Zuma, that is beginning to weaken in one way or another. But that's a big debate to enter into. To answer your question directly, I hold the view, no doubt, that there are indeed two centers of power, based firstly on the ideological premises of the two incumbents in question. President Zuma as for government on the one hand, and on the other hand, President Ramaphosa representing the policy base of Luthuli House. Surely the two gentlemen individually, philosophical and otherwise, hold different positions which could send ANC's policy direction in different ways. The question is, going forward, seeking unity, how do you reconcile these differences? It is indeed no doubt that it's difficult for the current leadership to live side by side with Zuma's influence, Zuma's legacy, that is continuing to, in a sense, shape the ANC that we've lived with in the past 9 years or so. It's going to be difficult to continue going forward. I think this is a situation which is likely to create an implosion of some sort and dividing the ANC in the middle. What the consequences of that will be remains to be seen.
I've got a different view. We may be two presidents or two leaders of the ANC, Ramaphosa and Zuma. As individuals, we don't have the same character traits. As human beings, we don't have the same character traits. However, these people are deployees of the ANC. They are sitting in those positions because of the grassroots, the branches, the regions of the ANC. The ANC is guided by a policy position. They've got adopted official policies. Whether Ramaphosa romances those policies or Jacob Zuma is excited about them, it's immaterial. It is the policy position of the organization. So I don't think there should be policy position differences on what either of them wants to implement in government.
Right.
Indeed, Cyril Ramaphosa, as the president of the ANC, can go to Jacob Zuma and say, you are the leader of the ANC, the member of the ANC. The ANC has adopted these 3 policy positions during the December conference. Can you make sure that they are implemented in government? But Audrey, we should also not forget, I do not know why do people want to separate Cyril Ramaphosa from the government when he's the deputy president of the country. He's also the leader of business in the country. So when people start saying Cyril Ramaphosa has a new agenda that is different from that of Jacob Zuma, what are they talking about? Because Cyril Ramaphosa represents the ANC. The ANC is leading, it's in power, and the ANC has policies that they want to see being effected into government. They are actually better positioned now to can implement ANC business in government. Whether right or wrong, but they are better positioned because Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC, the deputy president of the country, he's the leader of government business, and he is in a position to can say to his comrade and fellow comrade Zuma, we have these policies, that's what our people voted for in December, can we run with this? Instead of focusing on what the opposition wants. But in my conclusion, the ANC will be very stupid, and if they are not careful, very, very stupid, to realize what Kim is called the cappuccino moment, whereby the opposition is just waiting, and ANC is going to deliver what the opposition wants on a silver platter. They are about to do it. They are going to deliver it. Remember, most of these opposition parties, COPE, EFF, they existed because of Jacob Zuma. They were born because of Jacob Zuma, not because they've got different ideologies, because of Jacob Zuma. The day Jacob Zuma disappears, they will cease to exist, and they will be swallowed into the DA, back into the ANC, and the DA will be the biggest beneficiary.
Let me just
of
get
this
Mosida point to this as we're running out of time. Can we honestly say that the tensions that we saw within the ANC party getting into the elective conference have been sorted out? We heard utterances from the TG, Paul Mashatile, saying we need to sort out this whole issue of two centers of power. We need to have one power. We need to have the president of the ANC being the president of the state. You have Deputy SG Jesse Duarte saying, look, President Jacob Zuma is not going anywhere. How do you get to a marriage of minds within the top 6 going forward to assure this unity?
I think I need to reiterate what is critical is that what 2 centers of power is anybody talking about? Because we're talking here a deputy president and a president. I mean, the other one is heading a political party.
And yet we're getting this from the top ANC top 6.
And one gets the confusion that has been created out there. But I don't see where it's getting to, because in reality, there is fiction that has been created out there, and there is reality, which is what we're explaining now, that there is no such a thing called 2 centers of power. In regards to the differences of opinion, ANC has been like that. People have been different, voicing out their difference of opinion. There's nothing unbewilling of that. There is nothing strange about it. Everybody has a right to an opinion. It is, after all, an organization that encourages debates, whether from different platform or the other. the criticism will continue. It will not stop with Jacob Zuma. There will be further criticism that will happen even in the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa. And it shouldn't be that then the ANC is showing cracks. Here it is, still surviving, still on the next day. We're still having the ANC. And it seems to be growing. Others might have problems with it, but it's growing in numbers. But after all, there is no such a thing called two centers of power.
All right, Kim, very quickly, final remarks.
Well, I think we've seen a show of very poor leadership from the ANC since December's conference. And I think the time is now to show leadership that puts the interests of the party and South Africans ahead of their own selfish interests or the interests of the opposition parties. And I think we are watching. History is going to judge his leaders very strongly now.
We'll have to leave it there. Professor Barry Hanyane on the phone, thank you for joining us as well. We'll not be able to get your closing remarks, and a huge thank you to my guest here in studio. You're at home also for joining in the conversation. I saw your comments online. It's time for another very short break. This is ANC Prime. We'll be back on the other side of the top hour.